Now to Washington, D.C. Prosecutors have formally walked back their assertion made in court filings that the alleged Capitol rioters intended to capture and assassinate elected officials when they stormed the Capitol building. The acting attorney general in Washington, D.C. says there's no evidence at this time of catch and kill teams. The Washington Post reports the violent mob did come perilously close to finding Vice-President Mike Pence that day. Today, the area around the U.S. Capitol is already under intense security 5 days before President-elect Joe Biden is inaugurated. Jackson Proskow reports.
They call this the Green Zone, an unprecedented security perimeter ringing the U.S. Capitol, the White House, and most of downtown Washington. Spectators are simply not welcome, not at a time like this.
There's a great deal of very concerning chatter, and it's what you don't know that we are preparing for.
Ominous new details suggest the storming of the Capitol came perilously close to a massacre. USA! Police officers describe coming under violent assault by the mob.
Guys were like grabbing gear off my vest. I remember guys chanting, like kill him with his own gun.
There's a probe into whether some members of Congress provided assistance to the rioters.
If they aided and abetted the crime, there may have to be actions taken beyond the Congress and in terms of prosecution.
Those same lawmakers now say they fear further violence. Some are even purchasing body armor.
It's sad that we have to get to that point, but our expectation is that someone may try to kill us.
The FBI warns the threat of domestic terror attacks will not end with the inauguration and could come to the doorstep of cities across the U.S.
There's so much concern about security in the coming days that a planned dress rehearsal for the inauguration here on the steps of the Capitol for Sunday had to be called off. At the same time, there's now talk of closing bridges into Washington, D.C. from neighboring Virginia, and vehicles driving in and around the city may even be subject to random search in the days ahead, Donna.
Jackson, President Trump has 5 days left. Usually the new president drives to the inauguration with the outgoing president. What do we know about Trump's plans?
No surprise here, he wants nothing to do with the inauguration of his successor, Joe Biden. In fact, he's planning to fly to Florida first thing in the morning on the 20th on Inauguration Day. He won't be anywhere near this. He won't have anything to do with the swearing in of Biden. That's in stark contrast to Vice-President Mike Pence, who has indicated he may well attend the ceremony and who today phoned his successor, Kamala Harris, to congratulate her on her victory.
Okay, Jackson Proskow in Washington, thanks. Over the 4 years President Trump has been in the White House, his support among Republicans has been nearly rock solid. Now, cracks appear to be developing. Some longtime Republicans have had enough. Mike Armstrong is on the road in Pennsylvania, and he's been talking to some of them.
It was scary.
Melissa Dye was working from home during the riot at the Capitol, glued to her TV. What she watched, she blames on Donald Trump and the Republican Party, her party. Dye was a Republican committee member in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, but drew up a resignation letter that same night.
It was tough. I've dedicated 10 plus years of my life to doing this and to the party. And it was a tough thing to abandon.
This is the office in Cumberland County where people register their party affiliation. They've been busy. In the 5 days after the riot in D.C., 190 Republicans called to change their party. Statewide, it was more than 4,000.
There's a significant division within the party that we're going to have to face one way or another.
Gary Eichelberger is a commissioner in Cumberland County and a Republican nervous about what he's seeing.
I easily win.
Eichelberger says Republican politicians questioning the integrity of the election led to poll workers being abused before, during, and after voting day. And then came the riot in D.C. Conspiracy theories about voting machines or dead voters have pushed some in the party, he says, to reject reality.
You can't ignore those theories because they've taken root among a certain population that is pretty sizable now.
Eichelberger fears the rejectionists in his party may push out the realists. There's no exodus at this point, but he says if the bleeding doesn't stop, it could hurt Republican strongholds. He's feeling that. It could also hurt the country.
When our very foundation of our representative system and our public institutions come into doubt, that is not something you fix overnight.
Now, there's no question most are sticking with Trump, more entrenched in his camp than ever, but there are those put off by it all. One Lancaster Republican who left the party over the riot posted this tweet with a photo of the local Republican office this week. It's Trump sign still on the building. He says in the past, when an election was over, the signs would come down and people would start thinking about governing. The fact it's still up 2 months later, he says, shows it's the party of Trump. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Lancaster, Pennsylvania.